Hi everyone. This is a short tutorial on how to set up your sitting posture for meditation. So the two first things is that however you choose to sit, you need some padding underneath the legs if you're sitting on the floor and you're looking for a sort of wedge-like support that is sort of like this underneath the pelvis, whether you're sitting in a chair or on the floor. So for me, the wedge-like support works best by having something that is rounded, like a rolled up blanket, or it could be a bolster, it could be a cushion or two that you can sort of roll up, because then you can sort of start by sitting high on the top of that roll and then slide forward a little bit, and that in itself will already create that wedge-like support. And then you can sit cross-legged in different ways. Simple cross-legged posture is like this. And however you sit, you want the hips to be higher than the knees. So if your hips are tighter and the knees are sticking up, then bring more padding underneath the sitting bones. And if you're in this simple cross-legged shape, you want to support your knees so that there's not so much weight pressing down, maybe aggravating any sensations in the hips. So you could stick a cushion or a bolster underneath each knee, or you could take a long blanket roll and then wrap it around your ankles, tuck it in at the back a little bit, and then you already have support for both legs at the same time. So when you're setting yourself up, you could have this simple cross-legged shape. Some people like to sit in what's called a Burmese style, which requires a little bit more openness through the hips and the feet are in front of each other. Some people are comfortable taking the top of one foot behind the other calf. So it's worth exploring different postures just to see what feels most comfortable and relaxed. So we're looking for a posture that creates a balance between being alert, awake, but also at ease and relaxed. And if sitting cross-legged is not so useful for you, maybe you have an issue with your knees or your hips, a kneeling pose works for a lot of people, and you can use a stack of several cushions to kneel over. I sometimes use a bolster, and it's useful to bring the bolster up in height a little bit so you could place some books or blocks underneath, and you have the same support of your shins on the ground with some padding there. And you're also looking for the same wedge-like support. So once you come to sit down, you could either have a higher stack of books at the back end of the bolster or take a blanket and tuck it in behind the sitting bones so that you're supporting the spine in its natural curves so that you're supporting a sort of relaxed rhythm and alignment in the spine. And then whichever way you're sitting, you want the crown of the head to float up towards the ceiling. So the tips of the ears are lifting up to the ceiling, and that'll bring the chin in very slightly towards the chest. And then the heart area can stay broad and open, but the shoulders release down and the shoulder blades descend down the back. And then the arms can just hang, and you can have your hands in your lap or your hands on your thighs, wherever is comfortable. And I often bring my hands up a little bit. So I might use just a piece of clothing or whatever I have handy to lift the hands a little, and that feels much more relaxed for my shoulders. So again, it's worth playing around. And if this way of sitting on the floor is not really useful for you, then sitting in a chair can also be great. And again, you're looking for the same support. So you're sticking to your wedge-like support. So you could place a blanket roll on your chair. And you can also bring something like two even stacks of books to support your feet so that when you're sitting down in the chair, and you may start high on that roll and then shuffle forward a little bit. Your feet are positioned at a height that allows the thighs to be parallel with the floor. And then the posture is upright, supported, but there is still freedom in the spine. And you don't really need to use the backrest then. But of course, sometimes it's useful to sit right back at the chair, get that support underneath the sitting bones right back so that you can at least occasionally use the backrest. A similar way of achieving that support of the lower back could be to shift your whole arrangement against the wall. And you're looking for a way of sitting where you can wedge something um, against the wall that supports the lower back. So the upper back is still free, but maybe there is a bolster or a rolled blanket that supports the lower back. And everything else remains the same. So you're setting yourself up close to the wall, and this works better for a cross-legged pose than it does for a kneeling pose. Often with a kneeling pose, you can't quite get far enough back. And you take whatever support you have to the lower back area, just where the lower back has that natural inward curve, and you wedge yourself against the wall. So the upper body is still free and away from the wall, but there is a support for the lower back, and this can be a helpful way of setting yourself up if your back muscles are weak, if there is maybe an injury that you're recovering from, etc. And then there are a few things to be aware of that can happen quite easily. So one thing is that the feet go numb. And what you can do to help with that is to play with the amount of padding you have underneath the feet and also play with the height of your seat. So it may be that you need to come up a little bit higher, or it may be that you need to shuffle forward a little bit and come a little bit lower. Another thing that happens quite easily is that pain arises in the upper part of the back or the mid back. And this can result from the back muscles tiring. So, one thing that I've learned over many years is to, rather than trying to be super upright and sort of super alert, lean back a little bit, just very slightly. The spine will still appear completely straight, but you're leaning back a little bit, and then the back muscles can relax a little bit more. And the muscles at the front of the body, the thigh muscles, the quadriceps, and the psoas, engage a little bit more, and they're much stronger muscles. They can hold you upright much more easily. And then finally, it's also good to have different postures that you can swap between quite easily during one sitting. So one posture you could always come to is to place the feet flat on the floor and wrap your wrists or your elbows around the knees. And this is quite a supported posture, and you could just stay here for a minute or two, or you can stay here for longer periods of time and before you maybe come back to one of the previous positions. So good posture is firm and clear but relaxed. It allows the body and the mind to be balanced and alert at the same time. And sitting is not an endurance test. So the more comfortable you can make your seated position, the more you can then just work with whatever comes up in your meditation practice. Thank you and have fun exploring.